The brothers.
What's the name of our video? What are we doing here? Welcome back to the VG Bros. As you can see, we've got all the classic mini consoles stacked up here, and we're going to do a comparison and an analysis, and we're going to break down, and we're going to figure out, are these any good? Which one's the best? And the Genesis one just came out just very recently, so we're going to talk about that a lot too.
Been playing a lot of that
one. And let's jump right in.
We're going to tell you how to spend your money. If you're going to buy some of these, which ones should you buy?
Yeah.
First of all, not that one. That just made this video a lot shorter.
Yeah. So Atari games are garbage.
Yep.
They don't hold up at all. I don't know. If you were a kid in 1983...
They're all a waste of time. They're all completely unplayable today.
Yeah.
Every single game is unplayable. And I've been trying to play some of those games. Before we start on the classic console discussion, I will say that this largely depends on the television that you have. So my main TV in my living room is a 65-inch Sony, and it's only maybe a year old. It's a very modern 4K television. Every classic console that I hook up to this thing, even in game mode, has a lag, an input lag that breaks every game. Every game is unplayable, except for maybe a turn-based RPG. Every game is unplayable. Yeah. So I brought all these consoles down to my basement in the rec area where I've got a 55-inch Samsung, which is a couple years old, but still a very modern television. Same thing. Game mode, doesn't matter. Everything has an unplayable lag. And I just kind of gave up on these classic consoles after a while. This year I was at a garage sale and I found a Naxa brand television. I don't know, it was like a 40-inch TV. Barely used. I got it for $20. And I started hooking up all my classic consoles to this, and there's almost no lag. Almost every game is playable.
Punch-Out is the litmus test for input lag. Mm-hmm. If you can play Punch-Out on your television, you can play any game.
I don't know. If you tried playing these classic consoles on your TV and you're upset over the input lag and you don't know how to fix it, honestly, buy a different television. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. I have a Samsung something at home, and by default, the input lag was unbearable. You're right. But then I found that setting where you turn it on game mode, and now it's fine. Every game is playable. So I don't know.
Well, there you go. Compared to these other three consoles, I would say that the PlayStation Classic really falls behind the other three. It only had 20 games, which, you know what? That's fine. The Super Nintendo Classic only has, I think, 21 games on it.
22, I think, with Star Fox 2.
Sure. The problem with the PlayStation Classic is the game selection.
Yes.
Looking through this game list, there's a couple of games here that arguably would fall into the elite category: Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy VII. Now, personally, I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy VII fan, but I understand that game's importance and what it means to so many people. So I'd be okay to see that in the A column, right?
Sure.
And Metal Gear Solid. I mean, come on, the game created a genre.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
And honestly, the rest of these games are just kind of filler. And that's our biggest... We already did a whole video on this. You can go back and watch it. But that's our biggest problem with this PlayStation Classic, is it feels like 95% filler and 5% great.
Yep.
Whereas most of these other classics, it's kind of the other way around.
Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, the first Persona game. Does anybody want to play these games in 2019?
Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six. Like, really? You needed shovelware on your classic console?
Honestly, Toshinden, which has its own gravity. I can't stand that game. I couldn't stand it even back in the day. I
don't know. I liked it back in the day. But most of these games don't hold up very well. The game selection is just baffling. It's just utterly baffling. There's so many great PlayStation 1 games that they could have had on here that they didn't. It was a complete missed opportunity. I hope someday Sony will remedy that and they'll give us a good PlayStation Classic console with Klonoa and Parappa the Rapper and Final Fantasy 8 and 9 and Xenogears and Suikoden 1 and 2.
So many other games.
There's so many classic PlayStation 1 games, and to get this list of 18 mediocre games and 2 great games, it's a real disservice to that system.
So let's talk about the NES Classic. This is the first one that Nintendo came out with, and I got really excited right away for this because this is kind of what everyone had been dreaming for. Classic Nintendo system with an HDMI hookup so I can play it in my living room. I don't have to drag up an old tube TV from my basement. And man, it delivered in spades. I mean, this game list is unbelievable.
It's hard to complain. I mean, if you're going to pick 30 games, this is a pretty good list. It's 95% great, 5% kind of head scratching. Like, okay, that's a little fillery, but
Now,
it's great.
There are some games that are really rough to play today. The original Final Fantasy. Look, I'll be honest. I loved this game when I was a kid. It was one of the first RPGs. I mean, the Final Fantasy series was the first RPG games I ever played.
Yeah, it was.
So, really love this game, but there's no quality of life improvements whatsoever, and they really need that for this game. And there's better ways to play this game. There's like GBA versions.
The
DS.
the PSP has a definitive version of Final Fantasy 1. It's great. They fixed all those little problems that made the original game really cumbersome to play. It's great.
In order to buy 99 potions, you have to buy them one at a time, which takes forever. And you always need to buy 99 potions.
Always need
After
potions.
every good grinding session, you need to buy
Stock
max out
up.
on your potions. So I would take the NES Max controller with the turbo button, and I would put it underneath the leg of a chair, so it would just sit on it.
Yep.
And I would go to the potion shop and select buy one potion, and then I would just leave the room, come back an hour later, and then I was maxed out. I mean, seriously, that's how you maxed out on potions in the original Final Fantasy. It took a half a day. It was crazy. The original Metroid, look, it broke ground, and we loved it back then. It's really rough to play today without a map.
That's the thing. If it would have had the built-in map like Super Metroid did, it would be an elite game today.
Yeah.
But try playing original Metroid, and it's just without the map from Nintendo Power or something, you get lost and turned around, and you're constantly just like, man, have I been here yet? I don't even know. And a map was a game changer, and that's one of the reasons Super Metroid is one of the best games of all time.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
Metroid also has a lot of slowdown issues. The collision detection is weird. You get hit when after you've already walked through a doorway, you get hit by enemies, which is just really strange. There are definitely a lot of 8-bit games that are still 8-bit games, let's face it. But Mega Man 2, The Legend of Zelda, all 3 Mario games, I mean, come on, those are just elite games.
Yeah,
They just
for
are.
sure. Punch Out.
Yeah.
I love Punch. I've always loved Punch Out. I've always been a huge fan. So Genesis does what Nintendo don't. That's what they told us.
Do they, though?
I don't know. Let's find out.
Let's find out. So IGN did a review of the Genesis Mini Classic console. They actually said it was the best Mini Classic console ever. Like, better than the Super Nintendo, better than all of them.
Okay.
So I thought, wow, I mean, there's 40-something games on here, so I picked it up. And I've been playing a lot of these games. And there are a lot of great games on here. And then there are even more just okay games on here. And then there are a handful of absolute trash games on here. And I'm not really finding any, like, elite games.
Yeah.
I'll give you some of my thoughts on some of these games. Contra Hardcore. I had no experience with Contra Hardcore prior to this.
I've never played it.
Never played
prior to this either. Actually, I take it back. It came out. It was on the Switch. The Contra pack that just came out for the Switch that I got.
Okay.
It is a hard, I'm going to say impossibly hard game. Contra Hardcore came out on the Switch compilation Contra collection recently, and you can choose to play the Japanese version of Contra Hardcore. That is the version you need to play because it's a lot easier.
Okay.
A lot easier than the American version. This was at a time when games were actually made tougher for American gamers. They toughened them up for us because they were bitter over there about our rental market. And the American version of Contra Hardcore is impossible.
So I played that game for the first time on this machine. I had a game over before the screen shifted 1 frame. I had a game over. I died all 3 times. And one of the things that drove me nuts is that every enemy that you shoot and kill explodes in a fiery explosion. And there's so many enemies, you end up killing like, I don't know, what feels like 10 at a time. The entire screen is filled with explosions to the point where you can't see the bullets that are coming towards you from other enemies.
Yeah.
And this is what kept killing me. I literally could not see the bullets. And I would just die and I'd be like, I don't even know where that came from. And then I could see up the top of the screen there was a guy up there shooting at me. I couldn't see anything.
So frustrating.
The screen was so full of these fireballs. Like I said, I had a game over immediately in this game. It's very, very challenging.
Yeah, play it on the Switch. Don't play that version.
Or play Super Contra, or excuse me, Contra 3, the Alien. They couldn't call it Super Contra because the
They already
NES
used it.
had the word super in it. Play Contra 3, the Alien Wars.
Yes,
It's
that is a
wonderful.
great game.
It doesn't bother you so much with so many explosion enemies.
The challenge is perfect.
Well,
It's
you
not
can
too
select
hard.
a lower difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want a challenge, select the higher difficulty, and
Yeah.
it'll kick your butt. It's such an amazing game, and I don't know if I would call it an elite, like, greatest
out
of
of
all
10,
time
yeah.
kind of a game, but in terms of Contra games, I would.
Yeah.
Castlevania is on here, Castlevania Bloodlines. Again, I played it for the first time on this machine. I'd never played it before. It's fine. I mean, it's a Castlevania game. I will say that Super Castlevania 4 over here, it sounds better, it looks better, it plays better. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't at me. It just does.
Yeah.
Come on. We all
Super
know it.
Nintendo is just a more powerful machine, and the graphics and especially the music and the sound was just way more advanced than Genesis. It just was. I mean,
It was playing all these games on the Genesis compared to this. It feels like they took a sound chip out of the machine, and it's almost like you go up to watch a band, and then they say, okay, half the band members leave. And
Yeah.
we'll just go with half the instruments.
yeah.
And that's kind of what a lot of these
Yeah.
games sound like.
You're where's your bassist? How can this sound so weird?
These Super Nintendo games just sound so full. Like every track you hear is like, this is what music should sound like. And again, in the hardware limitations, this system came out
Sure.
like 2 years prior, so I get it, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Gunstar Heroes on the Genesis is really an amazing game. I don't know if I would call it elite, but it's close. It's a
Yeah.
blast.
It's pretty awesome.
I couldn't stop playing it. Of all the games that I was playing on this machine, it's the only one that I had a really hard time quitting. It's so much fun. So there are 3 side-scrolling shooters on this machine. I don't know if it really needed 3, but we've got Thunder Force 3, Darius, which that wasn't a Genesis game originally. I think they just put it on this machine. Like, now it is. Okay. Super Fantasy Zone, which is really kind of a cartoony side-scrolling shooter. Anyway, they're all fine. I'm not the biggest shooter fan in the world. I get it. It's fine. It's an arcade experience. I don't know. The older I got, the less I enjoyed an arcade experience. That's just my own opinion. If you love shooters more than anything, that's fine. But it's just not for me personally.
Yeah.
So, Comic Zone. This is an interesting game. It's like playing through the pages of a comic book. It's a brawler. It's fun. It's fine. I don't know if I would want to play all the way through it, and if I did, I don't know if I'd want to play it again. Shinobi 3. I guess Shinobi series was the Sega's answer to Ninja Gaiden, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know?
Kind of a similar theme.
It's similar. It didn't feel as hard as a Ninja Gaiden game, but it also didn't really sound as good. I don't know, the music just seemed kind of bland in this game, but it's a gorgeous game. It looks really, really nice. Some weapon upgrades and stuff. I haven't played it a whole lot. I'm gonna play it some more though, because I'm curious about it. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then you got Streets of Rage 2, which is fine. It's like a Final Fight type of game. I was playing that a bunch when I was here last week.
Yeah, we played Streets of Rage 2. It'll make you rage because you can hit your partner, which is just maddening to me. I don't understand why they did this. Final Fight 2 did the same thing. It's like, okay, everyone says Streets of Rage 2 is better than Final Fight because it's co-op at the same time. Well, okay, fair. That's a fair argument. Well,
Sure.
Final Fight 2 fixed that. But then both of those games, and by the way, Final Fight 2 is not on this machine, but what I'm saying is Streets of Rage 2, it just really takes the fun level down for me when I have to constantly worry about knocking my partner across the face.
I know.
Like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
But it's a fine brawler. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fine.
There's nothing that breaks the game. I mean, it holds up fairly well. It's not a 10 out of 10 experience, but it's fun.
Golden Axe is on here. Again, it's an arcade experience. I mean,
Not a fan.
I went to a barcade a couple years ago with some friends, and we all spent $10 in quarters and $20 in beer, and we beat the game, and it was blast. That's kind of the only way I would enjoy that game, I would say. I
Yeah.
don't know. A couple of Disney games on here, but not the one we all wanted. We've got Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse, and then World of Illusion with Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Where's Aladdin? We're all thinking this. We all want this. Like,
were there some licensing issues? Why couldn't they get Aladdin? I mean, they have other Disney games.
Mickey
on
Mouse
here.
and Donald Duck. We don't have Aladdin.
I don't know.
And there's
I don't
there's
get it.
other Disney games that aren't on here. The Lion King. And
Oh, yeah,
I'm
there's a
sure there's a
ton.
bunch more. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it's just disappointing. Both Sonic games are on here. You already know our opinion on Sonic the Hedgehog. We don't care for it because it's stupid.
So a couple of problems that this classic console is going to face in terms of being successful. And I think everybody wants it to be successful because people want a Sega CD and a Sega Saturn Mini and all that stuff. I was at Target today and they were fully stocked on these things. All right. When I went to Target 2 weeks after this came out, forget about it. 2
laughable.
months after this came, a year after this came out, forget about it. It was just impossible to find. They sold out the instant they got them in. Target was fully stocked today. Full. I mean, not one of these had been taken out. You could tell where they were stacked. I've been saying this for a long time. Sega is its own worst enemy. And what I mean by that is the mistakes that they've made are what is harming them the most. And I think that the past mistakes that they've made are what is going to harm the sales of this system. Number one is the fact that they've made so many of those compilation discs going back 15 years for every system, the Xbox, the PlayStation, the Nintendo Switch, the PSP. There's these compilation discs with 40 or 50 games on them. They're really good. They play great. They look great. And they're very inexpensive. They're literally like $20.
And you don't
get the
don't
Sonic-
just get Phantasy Star 4. You get Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah. You get some heavy hitters on
Yeah.
there. And you get all the Sonic games and you get the rest of the classic Sega. I mean, I don't think there's Castlevania Bloodlines or Contra Hardcore, but I don't know. It's a really good value. And Sega's been pumping those out and they're very cheap. They've devalued their own property a lot over the years by pumping those things out. Nintendo never did that. There's no Nintendo equivalent to what Sega has done with those compilation discs. Not even close. If Nintendo had done what Sega did, that would have been like one Wii disc with every Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Mega Man, Street Fighter 2, Donkey Kong Country, Final Fantasy, Earthbound game that's ever been made all on one disc, all for $20. That would be the Nintendo equivalent of that. That's never happened and it never will happen. They've devalued their own property a lot. The next mistake that Sega made was the fact that this is not the first Genesis mini console. And I understand that it's the first one that Sega produced in-house and they farmed out the other one and AtGames made it and they did a mediocre job. However,
That's generous.
I understand that, Phil understands that, and you understand that because we're gamers. But the casual gamer who just walked into Rite Aid 8 years ago and bought one of those AtGames Genesis, he's not going to know the difference. Casual gamers, they don't watch YouTube every day and they don't read the latest IGN articles all the time. They just don't. They're going to walk into Target, they're going to see this, and they're going to go, oh yeah, I bought one of those 8 years ago at Rite Aid for $25. And it was kind of a letdown. And they're going to keep walking. They're not going to know the difference. Sega has shot themselves in the foot many times over the years. I mean, going back to the 90s, they're their own worst enemy.
It's like when the Dreamcast first came out. People like me just kind of went, why in the world? I mean, Sega in the last 5 years has tried to support 6 different consoles, and now they're trying to give us another one. It's like, no, I'm not on board with this.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. Sega's their own worst enemy.
They really are. Too many compilation discs, too many farmed out classic mini systems. So many of the Genesis fans that grew up are just kind of your casual gamer, and they're just going to walk right on by this. And another thing is, what was the Genesis really known for back in the day?
Sports games.
Name one sports game on here.
Road Rash 2.
I guess.
don't know.
And I know there's licensing issues, but come on. They could have put Mutant League Football or some... I mean, there's other sports games that weren't licensed
Sure.
back then. They could have put some sports titles on here. They didn't do any.
Yeah.
That was their biggest strength. So when you compare it side by side with Super Nintendo has all their heavy hitters from back in the day.
Well, and the other thing too, I mean, this is pretty obvious, but you know, Nintendo first-party stuff compared to the Sega first-party stuff. You know, we're mentioning some of our favorite games on here. None of these were even made by Sega, I don't think. You talk about games like Gunstar Hero, Contra Hardcore, Castlevania. These games weren't even made by Sega. They don't have the library that Nintendo has. You know, in the Super Nintendo, one of the things that the Super Nintendo is really well loved for, it says RPGs. And here we have Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy III, Earthbound,
Mario RPG.
Super Mario RPG. There's 4 right there that are some of the most well-loved games of all time. I mean,
That's about a fifth of the entire library on the classic console is RPGs. I mean, that's...
yeah, and you want to talk about the elite games, right? The games that are in the discussion of greatest of all time.
10 out of 10.
I had a hard time finding one on here. I'm going to say maybe Gunstar Heroes.
Yeah.
In terms of the Super Nintendo, greatest of all time discussion, Super Mario World, Super Mario World 2, Zelda Link to the Past, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, probably.
Yeah.
Super Metroid, definitely.
Definitely.
Final Fantasy 3, I would maybe even put Donkey Kong Country into that category.
That's borderline. I love the interface. I love the UI on this. It's really sleek. Everything looks good. The controller feels good. The cord length is adequate. I'm going to say there are at least 10 games on the Super Nintendo Classic that are better than any one game on here.
When you start talking about games that I would consider kind of a waste of time that I would never even want to go back to, I mean,
Yeah.
Vector Man, Strider, Alex Kidd, Altered Beast, Columns, Landstalker, Sonic Spinball, Toe Jam and Earl, Kid Chameleon. Kid Chameleon is horrendous to control. These games are all just a waste of time. No one's playing these games today.
2019.
I go over to the Super Nintendo side. My least favorite games are the Kirby games. I just don't like Kirby. People still love those games. I don't know, not me, but other people do, which is fine. I don't care.
They're playable. They're not
They're fine.
broken. Yeah. F-Zero is probably one of the weaker titles, but even that, it's perfectly playable.
It is. I like F-Zero.
Yeah.
It's not a great game today, but
Yeah.
it's still You're right. It's playable.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that clunkiness where you just put it in and like Space Harrier, where you just go, oh geez, this is super wonky to control. And if we talk about RPGs on the Genesis, I mean, it just was a system not known for it. I was excited to play Shining Force because I'm a huge fan of the Fire Emblem series. And so I played Shining Force on the Genesis for a while. Man, that game is rough. It's a lot like the original Final Fantasy in its clunkiness, you know, buy one potion at a time kind of a thing. You get deep into a battle and then you end up dying. You got to start way over again. I was excited to play it. I gotta be honest. I put 45 minutes into it, and I'm not gonna play it again. It's rough.
I don't hate this at all. If there had never been any of those compilation discs, and if there had never been another version of the Sega Genesis Mini, this would be selling like hotcakes right now. I really believe that. There are a lot of people excited for this, a lot of people that grew up playing Genesis, a lot of casual gamers. Look, see what you want about the casual gamers. They pay the bills for the Nintendos and the Sonys and the Microsofts and the Sega. Casual gamers pay the bills. They're the ones that are the reason this industry can stay afloat. They buy so many games, and a lot of them are sports titles and shovelware, but dude, if you're Sony and Sega, you don't care. You're making money. This should be selling like hotcakes, but it's not, and it's Sega's own fault that it's not.
When this came out, a couple weeks after it came out, I went to a GameStop, and as I approached the store, I could see the line coming out the door and wrapping around the building. And I just sat there going, are you kidding me? And of course I walk up and talk to him, and everyone's like, yeah, we're buying the SNES Classic. That's what we're doing here. So I just left. I mean, yeah, it took me ages to find this. I finally, at one point, there was a brief, like 2 or 3 weeks, I just started seeing it everywhere.
Yeah.
They just started making a whole bunch. And then they quit. Just like that.
Yeah.
It's not You can't find it anymore.
That's exactly when I got mine. There was about a month there where they just started shipping a bunch more, and then they quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is not going to sell that well.
Yeah.
The hardcore gamers are going to go out and buy it, and then nobody else.
Yeah.
They're just not. So
I don't know. Maybe I'll mod it or hack it or whatever you call it.
yeah.
Put a bunch of games on there.
Yeah.
I think I want to do it with the PlayStation for sure. Otherwise, there's just no reason to own it other than
Oh, yeah.
for taking up room on your shelf. I
I've
don't-
watched the video on how to do that
Mm-hmm.
with the Super Nintendo Classic. It looks pretty easy
It
to
does.
do.
I'm going to try it on the PlayStation.
It looks pretty easy.
Let us know if you've done that. And,
Yeah.
You know, shoot me a tutorial, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, what's your favorite classic console? Tell us. We're interested.
The answer is Super Nintendo.
Pretty clearly. Yeah. I mean, come on. Super Metroid? You played Super Metroid before? Jeez. There are 5 games on here that are the greatest game of all time.
I don't know how that's possible.
I don't
but
either.
You're right.
I'm working on that math.